I'm a friend!
Princess Mononoke?
Princess of the spirits of ghouls, beasts, and ancient gods. The wolf stole her soul and now she lives to kill me.
You're beautiful.
Why can't the humans in the forest live together? Why can't we stop this fighting now?
I'm going to show you how to kill a god.
You cannot alter your fate, my prince.
Ashitaka, son!
However, you can rise to meet it if you choose.
Good evening, everyone. Jay Saki here with Giles, doing another review. You know who we are. How you doing tonight, Giles?
I'm doing okay.
Full disclosure, I had a root canal done today at the dentist. It went fine. I think root canal technology has gotten much better because it wasn't as dreadful as people in the past always made it out to be. It causes me to accidentally bite my swollen cheek a lot. So if I talk at all funny or sound remotely weird, then that is the reason. I might sound just fine, but in case anyone's like, why does Jay Saki sound so funny, then that's the reason. So, we both recently watched Princess Mononoke from 1997, written and directed by Hayao Miyazaki. So my question for you, Giles, is, without describing this as an animated movie or a Studio Ghibli movie, could you tell us what it's about? Like, short version?
What it's about is the encroachment of industrialization onto ancient Shinto/Buddhist Japan, and is very much an analogy to the fall of the samurai and the industrialization of Japan.
Well, I was not expecting you to say that. Well, let's say, without talking about the themes, like, those are the themes you pick up on in the movie, perhaps. But what's the story about? Who are the characters? What's the premise?
Okay, so what happens in the film rather than what the film is about. It's a small town prince, Ashitaka, who is accidentally... I'll start again on that.
I know it's hard to compose a few short sentences on what the film's actually about.
A small rural town in Japan is attacked by a beast that has been driven mad and turned into a god, so to speak, within the ideas of Shintoism. And the small town prince, Ashitaka, is wounded defending the town from the boar and has to go on a voyage to where the boar came from to see if his wound can be treated. As it is no normal wound, it is a supernatural wound.
Let me give this a try. The story takes place in... well, no one would know what that means. I looked this up. It's strictly speaking, the story takes place in the Muromachi era of Japan. People will often say it's the feudal Japan. No, I looked this up. This is the Muromachi era of Japan, which was after feudal Japan. But anyways, it's about a guy who gets his arm cursed by a forest god turned demon, and he has to be exiled from his village to travel up north to meet his fate and see. He's told that the curse will kill him, but at the very least he could travel north and see where the curse came from and see if he can make a difference. There, does that sound about right?
I guess you could phrase it like that.
Now, if I was to be a little more detailed, this character Ashitaka, he's from the Inishi tribe, who used to be very big, but the emperor wiped out the Inishi tribe, and the Inishi tribe is now small in number, and you can tell they're more one with nature. What happens is there's this forest god in the shape of a boar, who has been cursed in some way, and he comes down and he attacks the village, and Ashitaka kills him, and then he gets his arm cursed, and then he is told that he must, by the village priestess, is told that the curse will consume him and kill him, but he must, be exiled to meet his fate up north. And then they say, he's the last in their line of princes, and there's a whole bunch of elderly guys in the room who with buns in their hair, and you're like, oh, they must be in the line of princes or something. I bring this up because there's a lot of like exposition in this movie, and I was really taking time to really think about what was going on at the start of this film.
Well, it really depends on what they're trying to portray, because the top knot is a symbolization of warrior culture in Japan, and he ceremoniously cuts off his top knot. That is him, in a sense, renouncing his, I guess, either warrior or princely status of the town.
Okay, now I'm suspecting if people have clicked on this review, they're wondering what the heck are we talking about, because we're probably all over the place. One way of describing this movie is it's an animated Studio Ghibli film, and Studio Ghibli can do no wrong, so watch it and love it. It's this very radical animated cartoon film with a PG-13 rating with violence and decapitation. Watch it and love it. That's another way of describing this movie.
This movie's revolutionary for many reasons and held in high regard by a lot of people for a good reason. It's also the last animated feature film to be drawn on plastic cell animation.
The more you know.
When it comes to the boar, when it comes to his wound, when it comes to the depiction of the city in the north he goes to and the forest surrounding it, people have suggested that it has an environmental message, and that is true to an extent, but it's a sort of juxtaposition between the environmental and the spiritual, because the spiritual side of Japan in Princess Mononoke is shown to be heavily tied into the environment, as it is a lead ball from a new rifle that pierces the boar god and sends him into a rage which corrupts him. And every time we see the North City touching something, it always ends up corrupting something. But that comes into another theme of it doesn't necessarily show the North City or Eboshi, the lady that runs it, to be inherently evil.
Okay, this is where I say my usual, I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about what's your history with this movie? Like, when did you see it? And what's your history with Studio Ghibli? That's the big selling point with this film. It's a Studio Ghibli movie. And people sure do love Studio Ghibli.
We didn't actually get a lot of Studio Ghibli when I was growing up because a lot of anime was tape traded and it was very difficult to get. But Princess Mononoke was such a large, influential film that I managed to get a hold of a legitimate VHS of it, and that's how I saw it originally. But I originally saw a slightly edited version, and there is a interesting series of discussions about this, but to cut it all into one condensed line, when Hayao Miyazaki went to see the Western cut of the movie, he stormed out in anger and refused to have the movie shown if it was ever cut.
Right, because they wanted to cut out the violence to make it more kid-friendly.
Yes, they also wanted to pare it down to, in the words of the producer, the Western producer, make it more accessible for Western audiences.
Yeah, right, but it turned out to be very accessible regardless.
Yes, it is a great artistic film. The storytelling is actually rather simple, but you don't need complex storytelling for anything, really, as long as you pull off what you're doing very well. And the Princess Mononoke does. It's a commentary on sort of environmentalism and spiritualism and tradition facing against industrialization and progress, set in a sort of fantasy version of post-feudal Japan.
Well, I want to talk about my history with Studio Ghibli. For some reason, the first good Studio Ghibli film that I was aware made a splash in the US, I'm sure there were other ones, but the one that, to my knowledge, brought most attention to them was My Neighbor Totoro. I remember seeing that movie, or at least parts of it, back when I was like 3 or 4. And a lot of families saw that one for some reason. I don't know, I think maybe it was advertised in Christian magazines back then, but that one got around. I knew a lot of people who were not into anime, not into Studio Ghibli films, but they all had seen My Neighbor Totoro. And so some of my siblings were really into Studio Ghibli films. For a long time, I wasn't. it was a thing, and it wasn't my thing. But with time, around the years 2013, American films were getting increasingly more and more political. Things are really bad today with American films, but around that time, that's when there was more times where you kind of like groan and sigh at movies. And it occurred to me that Studio Ghibli films, at the very least, even if they were about Japanese or Asian politics, they were not American politics. So I could divorce myself from any sort of preachiness because for most part it really did not affect me. And I also had an interest like what art says about a society. And I always started to wonder, like, whenever you watch anime or just Studio Ghibli movies, like, what is this saying about Japanese society? Like, what do you notice most that is different from Western society? So I had an interest in that, so I actually started to go back and revisit Studio Ghibli with a whole newfound appreciation. And I don't love everything they do, but I know when Studio Ghibli produces a movie, they take it seriously. So I can take that aspect seriously, and I can at the very least watch and say, okay, what are you gonna show me, movie? I might not love you, but I can respect you. So I've gone back and watched various Studio Ghibli films, but I had not seen Princess Mononoke in a very long time. In over 9 years, I would say, I had not seen it. And I've realized I never really had a strong opinion on it. I first saw it back when I was like 14, I think. Back then I thought it was kind of silly, like all the mystical, magical stuff that happens at the end. But that was one of those things I wanted to go back and reevaluate. I wanted to say, hey, maybe there was a point to the Japanese mysticism. Maybe this is just how they see things. So I wanted to take all of that into consideration. So I rewatched it alone by myself in my house with my big screen TV. And I have to say, well, overall, I did not enjoy this movie that much. It was interesting, and I also think it's kind of a bad movie.
Oh, well, I'm going to take the absolute opposite opinion in that I think it's a great movie, very well done, with very, very few issues.
Is this is this a movie that you watch a lot?
It's not a movie I watch a lot. I think I would get burnt out of watching this movie quite a bit because it's not something I watch strictly for entertainment. It's something I watch to appreciate of what it is.
I think this movie mostly impressed people because it's an animated action-adventure movie, and it's an animated action-adventure movie for adults or older kids. And no one had ever watched anything quite like it in the United States, or in the Western world, if you will. No one had seen anything quite like it outside of Japan. So it dazzled critics, and I think critics were a little bit too quick to like it because they hadn't seen anything like it. But I honestly thought very carefully about it. I think it is kind of a bad film, with a couple of strong moments that we will get into. There are things that I will say, yes, that was very well done, but I don't think it was that well written. I don't think the themes were that good. I know people say, oh, Studio Ghibli has these really great environmental messages that are subtle, unlike American films that hit you over the head with their message. I did not find the environmentalist message very subtle. I thought it was ultimately stupid. I guess if I had to say a positive, like, I like the look of the movie.
I'm just going to have to take the absolute other stance, because, first of all, I like anything that uses a historical context or events in history and then uses that to base a movie off of, because there's, like I said earlier, there's a lot in this film that's based on the perceived death of Japan during its industrialization. Especially in the movie, they kind of reference the death of the samurai because of the innovation in rifles.
Now, you see, that's the thing where I'm not going to give the movie a pass just because there's some historical or cultural thing behind it. Just referencing that element does not work for me. But I'll say this. If anyone has not seen this movie and you're curious, I'll say go ahead and watch it if you're curious. It's not going to be bad for you. And I think you probably give it a strong recommendation. we're going to get into spoilers because we're going to start going through the story bit by bit. Ashitaka, the main character. How do you feel about this character? Is he super deep and complex?
He's not super deep and complex, but he doesn't have to be. He is someone who's obviously brought up as a prince of the village with duty in mind. As while he is upset of being banished from the village, he's not exactly whining, complaining about it. He knows what his duty is, and he knows what his duty is to the gods and the Japanese people and so forth. Jumping about halfway into the film, but there was a bit where he restrained his demon-possessed arm from killing someone.
Okay, so Edward Cullen from Twilight and how people mocked that character for having no personality. Well, everyone in Twilight is mocked for having no personality, but Edward Cullen was like a heartthrob to impressionable teenage girls for being stoic and quiet and whatever. It occurred to me that Ashitaka was also a heartthrob for impressionable girls back then. Connection?
I don't see it. I don't think I've known anyone to consider him as a heartthrob. I generally consider this to be not a hero's journey, but you need someone who is the fish out of water to push this story along, which is what he is.
Well, trust me when I say there were girls who really liked this character. And it occurred to me, he also has very little personality. Even if you want to say it's because he's like a religious stoic, still, he has very little personality, and it is a bit shocking how well he takes like banishment from his village. And he's pretty young, so it's really surprising that he's like such a virtuous person, just like Rey from the Disney Star Wars movies. And people did not hold back on Rey. I think Rey was a badly written character in the Disney Star Wars, so Ashitaka, I don't think I should give him a pass on this.
I don't think he's necessarily that bad. I generally do think he was brought up with duty to the old ways, and when he's banished from the village, he's very very cognizant of the fact that this curse is going to kill him. So what else has he got to do? I mean, if he just... I guess I'd ask the question, would you like him more if he just suddenly broke down and cried?
He doesn't have to do that, but maybe he can, have scenes where he looks at his wounded arm and contemplates his mortality. Maybe he sheds a tear. Just something.
There are parts of the film where he is resisting the influence that is put on his arm, and he is sort of upset and concerned, but what else could you really do with that character and that situation, because everything is a surprise to him, and everything is not new, but well, yes, new, but everything is so different and antithetical to how he was brought up and the life he has lived. And now suddenly he is just going to die from a curse he had really no part in.
I think this would have been a better movie if they made Ashitaka like an older man in his late 40s or 50s. Maybe gave him gray hair and made him like an Obi-Wan Kenobi type person. And I'd be able to reconcile his stoicism better. But he seems like he's like 25.
I think this is a real cultural thing, because stoicism is more important in Japan than it is in the West, even to this day. I didn't mind him. I don't think he is like the best part of the movie, but I don't mind him being there. He is mostly just there to show the counterpoint of what's happening in the north.
Okay, well, let's go through the story a bit. After Ashitaka's like on his way up north to find, the source of the iron ball that tormented the boar god, there's a monk character, Jigo, the one who's eventually going to try to take the head of the forest spirit to give to the emperor, because the emperor wants immortality. That's like detail in the background. When Ashitaka shows up at the one town, Jigo's like, hey, here he is right on time. There he is right now. Like Jigo knew he was coming. What was that all about? Did Jigo know something?
I am more in the vein that this guy is more of a con man.
So he saw Ashitaka and he's like, oh, that person's someone I can use?
Pretty much, yes. He's very much an opportunist, especially all the way through the film. When he sees, the other gods and all these things, he's always an opportunist, even if he is some sort of Shinto practitioner.
Okay, it seemed pretty clear that he was like waiting on Ashitaka, like he had some idea of who he was and where he'd be coming from. He's like, well, there he is right now, Like he was like waiting in that town for him, and then he like then he follows Ashitaka and follows him around. He doesn't even get anything out of him. He helps him get his bag of rice, and then they travel together and make camp. He tells Ashitaka like, oh yeah, I know that you're from the Inishi tribe because you're riding a goat. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone. Ashitaka asks him where the Iron Ball came from, and he's like, okay, travel north, there's a town there where you might find your answers. So he doesn't even get anything out of him, so I'm just wondering what the detail was there with him knowing that he was showing up in the town.
I generally think it was more of an opportunist thing.
Opportunity to do what?
Be a con man. I mean, it's this strange foreign person. Who knows what you can get out of him?
But he gets nothing out of him, he just helps him out, is all he does.
Well, might just being a nice guy, a nice con man. But I think he's more of an opportunist considering his character through the film.
Okay, well, we'll move on. So Ashitaka gets to Irontown. And Irontown is ruled over by Lady Eboshi. And yes, everyone, this is where I'm nice. Lady Eboshi is a really great character. Like, really solid writing, really fascinating, complex, sort of a villain, but, I guess everyone's kind of the villain in this movie, right? There's no clear villain.
I don't necessarily think that there is a villain per se. I mentioned it earlier, but I think one of the big themes of the film is industrialization and progress. While it has its up points, while it has its good points, it can inevitably consume and destroy everything around it.
Okay, so this leads to another one of my problems is Irontown is going to mine the forest to get iron because they're building weapons of war. And that's the conflict. It's like Ashitaka's like, you're going to destroy the forest because you want to build weapons. And I'm like, you can't... It's not enough just to say the villains are building weapons. Okay? I mean, Japan has been invaded by the Mongols twice now. It depends. If you're gonna make it like they're building weapons, then you have to have like, what are they using the weapons for? And this movie is just like building weapons is inherently wrong. But I don't know what their problem is. They might have a very good reason to build weapons. They seem to be getting attacked by a bunch of samurai. And you know what else? What if they weren't building weapons? What if they were just, wanting to mine for gold in that area? Or what if they wanted to build Vatican City on that forested hillside? I see nothing wrong with chopping down the forest to build that. It just so happens to be weapons, therefore conflict with the spirits of the forest. Maybe they wanted to build a water aqueduct through the canal, through the forest. There's any number of reasons to destroy a forest to build something, and Japan's a small island nation. There's not a lot of places to build.
Again, I don't think it's necessarily the guns or the weapons, because I think you might have... Did you watch the dub or the sub?
I watched the dub. No, wait.
Oh, well, that explains a lot.
Well, do tell. Is there something more... Did the subtitled version have something better?
Yeah, the subtitled version has different text or different scripts to the dub.
Oh, see, this is interesting. I am happy to concede that there is something I've missed here. So I'll just say, saying that the villains or the one side is building weapons means nothing to me. I don't care about Japanese heritage or culture or history in the situation. It's just a movie. You gotta have more than that. So, but go ahead. What did I miss in the original Japanese version?
It's not the weapons per se that is the problem, it's the fact of what the weapons are representing. And again, what I said earlier, the weapons are representing the death of old Japanese culture, which is very much, at least in my opinion, what the movie is about, because it is essentially killing gods for technological progress. And it ties back to the beginning of the movie where the gun was used to torment a god until it almost laid waste to a village. And while it's not being literal because it's more of a fantasy Japan, it's analogous to the death of their culture in favor of resources, technological progress, industrialization, all those things, which is a huge cultural argument in Japan to this day.
For you, the Japanese culture behind the movie influences your opinion. For me, I can't let that affect my opinion on the movie in a positive way. It's just something. It's something to note, but it still, as an isolated movie, that's just unclear, and it doesn't make me think it's not a bad film.
You always have to take the context of the art and the culture together. Otherwise, a lot of things are not going to make sense. You could watch Goodfellas and why are the Italians doing these things? Unless
think
you are aware of that culture and what is being presented in the film as analogous, then you're going to miss out.
I think there's a difference, but I'll let you make your point without objection. What else happens in this movie? Basically, it's all about Ashitaka bringing peace between Irontown with Lady Eboshi and the forest spirits and, well, the character Princess Mononoke. There's a bit. How do you feel about the whole ending section? It's like the forest god shows up, they blow its head off. Jigo, the monk, and his men are trying to take the head away. And the forest god's with its head gone, it starts to for the rest of its body starts to destroy and kill everything. And that they give it back its head, and they do. And once they give it the head back, it sacrifices itself and restores the whole entire forest. And then it ends with some semblance of peace being found. And Ashitaka's like, I'm going to help Lady Eboshi to rebuild Irontown. And it's like, okay, are they still going to mine for iron? And they're still having a little bit of a war with some samurai who were, I guess, wanting the same iron, right? Is that resolved?
I'm pretty sure it gets resolved at some point in the future. We're left a little bit to our imagination. But again, the issue is not necessarily that industrialization bad. It is the fact that it was not working in harmony with nature and the nature spirits. So you get to see a lot of the good sides of Irontown, like the women can work and not be prostitutes. The lepers are taken care of. Good things, people are fed, housed, etc. But it's coming at the cost of the world around it. And they're not saying you can't mine for iron. They're not saying you can't do all these things. It's just stripping more than is necessary. Which is partially the environmental thing. Like I said, most of the environmental spirit gun thing is analogous to Japanese culture at the time. Well, not at the time, but at the rough time this movie was set. Everything else, it has a slight environmental message to it of you can do these things while at the same time still respecting nature and so forth. Like the two, progress and industrialization and nature and tradition, can all live in harmony if one doesn't outbalance the other.
I will say, we should say, yes, Lady Eboshi, great character. Her whole thing is she wants to, mine the iron out of the forest. She's an industrialist, but she's also someone who, as they said, she bought up the contracts of all the brothel girls and gave them a job, doing stuff, working in the town. And she even took all the lepers and gave them a place to live, and has them building rifles, very early Japanese rifles. So she's an opportunist, but she's also doing these. It's showing the the positive side of what you can do when you are using your industrialism for a good purpose. Like, there are people benefiting from the industrialism in spite of the forest being burned down. So, hats off to you, movie. Lady Eboshi was a really well done character. Can't say anyone else is that memorable in this movie. Jigo the monk is, I guess, the next most complex character or interesting character. Ashitaka's a plank of wood. Princess Mononoke, the girl who's adopted by the wolf god, or gods, whatever, she's just kind of there. I don't have any strong opinions on that character.
Well, again, she's an analogous representation. I know someone's going to mention it, but the character's name is actually San.
What did you say before that just now? I know her character's name is San, but what did you just say?
She's another analogous part of the story.
Yes.
Literally. So
an analogous part of the story.
Yeah, this film is not a deep dive in character and motivation. It has one thing to say, and it does it, at least in my opinion, pretty well.
Do you know what I mean when I say I feel like if it wasn't animated and was not a Studio Ghibli film, I think this movie would be very forgettable. I really feel like it rides on the history of Studio Ghibli, and people just love Studio Ghibli, and there's a lot of their movies that I think are honestly really good, but I think if you just take the Studio Ghibli brand off it, and I think if you get over the novelty of the animation, it's just kind of bland.
I don't want to get over the novelty of the animation, because I think the animation is one of the big contributing factors to its longevity. It is beautifully animated.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Like, movies that have that spend billions on special effects, that adds to the longevity. I know some people out there think I'm just being mean. I honestly really wanted to like this movie, but my whole experience watching it was just one of a bit indifference. Because even when I was younger, I didn't love the movie. I was like, oh, okay, yeah. It was an animated action adventure movie with a guy who decapitates people with his bow and arrow. That's kind of cool, and that was kind of the impression left on me when I was younger. Going back to it after all these years, I'm like, yeah, it's just kind of a very novel animated action adventure movie with a guy who decapitates people with his bow and arrow. Those are the selling points.
I don't think you can really look at this film in a sense of hindsight, because animation has come a long way after Princess Mononoke. There was great animation before Princess Mononoke, because this came out in 1997, and for example, a lot of the beautifully animated Disney films came out in the 30s and 40s. But I think that Princess Mononoke is really something that brought that visual style to the West and made it popular. Even if it wasn't the first one to do it, it was the most successful.
Question, how do you think this holds up against other Studio Ghibli films? Do you think this is one of the better ones, one of the more okay movies? Do you have any thoughts there?
I don't think it's one of the best Studio Ghibli movies. I think they've done better.
Thank you.
Now, on one hand, I think this is an amazing work of art and should be treated as such, but I can get bored looking at a fantastic work of art.
Oh, were you bored looking at this movie?
No, I was not bored, but say, I can watch some other Studio Ghibli films more for the entertainment value than Princess Mononoke, because when I'm looking at Princess Mononoke, I'm looking at the art, I'm looking at the music, the score, I'm looking at the characters, specifically the character art. I'm really not there for the story, because in my head it's already there, it's already set out, I already know it. I'm watching the beauty of it, while other Studio Ghibli films don't necessarily look as good, but the story is better.
Okay, well, I can, sympathize with that. I mean, while watching, I was kind of imagining, like, well, if I was to make a movie with these same visuals, or write a book, or make a video game or something, what would I do with this similar type of story? In fact, whenever I was watching, I was thinking of, have you played Zelda Breath of the Wild?
I've watched a friend play it. I haven't played many Zelda games.
Okay, well, basically, I was thinking the movie reminded me of Breath of the Wild, And then I was doing a little bit of like research, and apparently the people who made Breath of the Wild said they used Princess Mononoke as part of their inspiration for the game. And I'm like, having played it, yeah, that does figure. Link actually has a blue tunic for once, and not a green tunic. And I suspect they got that from Ashitaka wearing a blue tunic. But I do like to separate, like, there's sort of such a big fandom around Studio Ghibli movies that I once was with a group of friends and I said, what is everyone's least favorite Studio Ghibli film? And someone really didn't like that, and he thought I was just being mean and trying to tear down Studio Ghibli, which I was not trying to do. I think it cheapens Studio Ghibli to say, oh, all their films are A+ masterpieces. They're all equal. It's like, that cheapens all their movies to have that kind of a mindset. They have, even if you think all their movies are good, they have lesser quality and better quality movies where they put more or less effort into the writing and production. And I think it's only right that the best gets credit for that. Even if I were to give Princess Mononoke a positive review, I would still say I felt like it was one of their overall weaker movies.
I think story-wise, yes. I think it's probably one of their prettiest movies. I think only maybe Spirited Away is on equal terms with it. But they have done better stories, like My Neighbor Totoro, or Kiki's Delivery Service, or Nazca and the Valley of the Wind.
I've not seen Nazca and the Valley of the Wind in a long time, although you just mentioned My Neighbor Totoro and Kiki's Delivery Service. Weirdly, I really like Kiki's Delivery Service for very, I guess you can say, personal reasons. There's a thing that movie explores that... Pardon me. There's a thing that Kiki's Delivery... There's a moment in Kiki's Delivery Service that really speaks to me, so I like that one. Someone once said they thought My Neighbor Totoro was one of the most boring movies ever made because nothing happens. Maybe it is, but I watched My Neighbor Totoro while I was sick as a pig with COVID, and I needed something to watch, so I put that on, and the movie kind of worked for me in that moment because, you know, the mother in that movie is in the hospital, and it's all about them trying to visit her, and I kind of felt like, you know, Totoro was visiting me while I was in the hospital, and it gave me comforting feelings.
That's just a hallucination. That's the flu playing tricks with your mind. I think a lot of Studio Ghibli films outside of things like Princess Mononoke have a really basic thing that becomes fantastical. Like visiting your mom in the hospital is a rather basic thing, but it turns into like a big fantasy adventure. Same with like Kiki's Delivery Service, where, you know, I move out and get a job. It's kind of very basic to understand things, while even Spirited Away, I lost my parents in a theme park.
That's interesting. You just gave me something to think about.
Princess Mononoke is a lot more focused, like I said, on the analogous Japanese culture of the time the movie's set in.
So I want to talk a little bit about what did we learn? Just researching this movie, I know off the cuff everyone says, oh, Princess Mononoke, it takes place in feudal Japan. Feudal Japan is very specifically between the years 1185 to 1333. That's feudal Japan, also known as the Kamakura period. And then you had, after that, the Muromachi era of Japan, which is 1336 to 1573, and somewhere in that span of time is when Princess Mononoke takes place. Oh, the movie also teaches you a bit about early guns, early Japanese rifles. I'm assuming that's accurate. You know, it's interesting learning about those things. Do you find learning about early guns interesting?
Well, I did, but I more studied Japan's influence from Dutch studies. And they termed any sort of Western scientific knowledge as Dutch studies because it's the Dutch who they got the books from. But it's those books that led to their attempt at making guns and so forth, which again led to a death of a lot of tradition.
Oh, Interesting. See, we're learning things. Always try to learn things when you go to the movies or watch a movie at home. I was gonna say, it's funny, this movie is supposed to be like, oh, it's historical Japan. Then there's spirits of the woods and stuff, and demons. And it makes me wonder, is that just how Japan was back then? There were just, like, forest gods and stuff?
In Shintoism, there are almost essentially gods for anything, including local gods, house gods, family gods, etc. And Japan, even if they don't actually believe in these things anymore, they still take the tradition seriously.
Right, because you see, well, I still wonder, were these things real back then? I once watched a bit of an anime, Inuyasha. Remember that one?
Vaguely.
That involves a girl going back in time to medieval Japan, if you will, and there's crazy creatures and monsters and things. And I'm like, okay, just go back in time then, and there are monsters and gods and stuff. It feels a bit like if you were to make a European film, have someone go back in time to medieval Europe, and good heavens, there's fire-breathing dragons. And it's like, but there weren't, so...
It's a fantasy, that's why.
Have you ever heard of a guy named a historian, William of Newburgh? Who?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, well, in English history, there was a time called the Anarchy, and I guess it was a time where crime ran rampant in England, and there was civil war going on, and there was famine and plague, and there was a priest historian who called the name known as William of Newburgh. He wrote of zombies and vampires walking around during that time. He did not call them that, but he described them, and he described them in a way where you would say, "Oh, that's a vampire, that's a zombie," as well as other strange things. And I'm left to wonder, did that happen? Maybe things got so bad in England that hell broke loose on Earth. Maybe strange things like that just happened back then.
I doubt it.
And then I wonder, maybe in Japan, maybe those spirit gods just existed. They were just part of the Japanese history, and they have been forgotten. At the end of the day, you're going to believe it or you're not going to believe it.
I just think, no, it's a fantasy film. It's taking, aspects of history and Shintoism and Buddhism and throwing them together in a blender to make this fantasy story.
Okay, so you know how all the environmental stuff and Japanese cultural stuff changes your appreciation of the movie?
Mm-hmm.
Is that because you are a romantic?
In the classical sense, I guess you could say.
Because I just think I'm a realist here, and that's why the environmental message does not work for me.
I think it's fine. I like an environmental message that's not showing specifically one side as being evil. In the film, they're wrong. In the context of the film, they are wrong.
Who's wrong?
But the people, the Irontown. In the context of the film, they're wrong because they're stripping the forest and all the spirits' homes and so on. But they're not portrayed as just moustache-twirling, dastardly villains, like Captain Planet would do. They look after their poor and the sick, and they actually do good things. It's just that on this particular thing, they're overextending their reach.
I don't know if you could tell what I was doing there, but I think in our last review, I think we described me as being a romantic, and you said you were a realist, so as a joke, I'm saying you're the romantic here in this situation. I'm the realist. See what I did there?
No, it's just what context of what the film is, and it just so happened to be a period of history I've read into, so I can see the parallels, at least what I think that they were intending with the parallels.
Did we learn anything else from the movie?
Don't shoot gods.
If they're wishy-washy gods of the forest, then mow them down. You have my blessing.
I do not bless. I devour that. I disavow that. Don't shoot anything that is weirdly supernatural. Bad things will happen.
I think they need to get a priest to do an exorcism on the forest and drive those spirit gods out. They're pagan. I'm being mean. I'm sure the forest gods are protecting the forest and doing their job. Yeah, I think that's about it. I don't think I have any other strong thoughts on this movie.
I don't think so. It's a very nice looking film. It's not a deep story.
I don't disagree. It's a very nice looking movie. It's not a deep story. Are we missing anything here? Anything we've not said about this?
I don't think so. 1997 seemed to be one of the great years for big box office films. Whether they were a success or not is debatable.
Okay, well, we can go down the list then. That year in theaters, I saw the movie Fairy Tale. I also saw Anastasia. That has my approval. The Game with Michael Douglas, Saving Private Ryan, Air Force One, Conspiracy Theory, which is a great movie, The Devil's Own, Gattaca, Con Air, Good Will Hunting, My Best Friend's Wedding, In the Company of Men, Liar Liar, Mouse Hunt, The Fifth Element, Life is Beautiful, The Lost World.
Also Men in Black and Hercules, the Disney one.
You know, I've never watched Men in Black.
Oh, it's an okay film. Back when Will Smith actually had people telling him what to do and he did it. If you can't tell, I am not fond of Will Smith's solo ventures into film.
I haven't thought about it enough, but that should be a story for another time. Sticking to this review, though, is there anything else to say about this movie? It does to me. It seems like a weirdly popular film, but it's not one of the best. There's all these directors who reference it, like James Cameron saying, "Oh, it was a huge inspiration for him," and it's like, right, because it's an adult animated action adventure movie where a guy decapitates people with his bow. That's it, and it's stuck in your head. But other than that, it's really just not a strong movie.
Watch it at least once. I don't think you'll regret it. I think it's a very beautiful movie. I think the score is great. Don't expect a deep story. At least all the characters are portrayed pretty well, in my opinion.
The characters are, outside of Lady Eboshi and Jigo the monk, they're all just planks of wood.
Yeah, I was okay with them.
Alright, that's... Do you have anything else to add?
I don't think so. Watch the film. You might be pleasantly surprised.
And there you have it. I have nothing else to add either. That is all, audience. That is all we have. Have a good night. Enjoy your car ride, or whatever it is you need to do to get on with your day.